Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Merchandising Art or Science. I'm Rochelle Casco, and I'm part of the Strategy and Optimization team here at Algolia. I'm joined today by Ben Pusey, Director of Strategy and Optimization at Algolia, and Colleen Waters. Colleen is a Senior Director of E-commerce at Steve Madden. She oversees site merchandising and delivering a customer-centric path to purchase across a portfolio of 5 brands: Steve Madden, Dolce Vita, Betsy Johnson, Greats, and Blondo. Colleen has 20 years of retail experience and over 10 years of experience in the digital space. Prior to joining Steve Madden, she worked at Victoria's Secret, Hudson Bay, Lord & Taylor, and Bloomingdale's. She recently taught a session at Howard University on merchandising to engage customers and move product. We are really looking forward to the upcoming discussion. Thank you for joining us. I'll pass it over to Ben and Colleen to get started.
Thanks, Rochelle. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks Colleen for agreeing to talk to us. So we've got a few talking points, and the first one, I think we've got a slide, is just an overview, really. Like what drives the merchandising strategy at Steve Madden? What's the big inputs, big things that go into the decisions that you make?
Yeah, thanks for having me today. It's definitely always a balancing act because we're a brand that's been around so long. We have what we call our icons that we know will always drive. Some of them have been bestsellers for 30 years, but they'll also always been found. A lot of them are name and claimed. People know what they are. So at the start of the season, we're really looking at big buys, trying to get reads as early into the season or even before the season. As much as we can, we do a lot of pre-order so that we can stay ahead of the curve and balance key styles that may be in year 2 or 3 with the more exciting kind of first to trend moments. And then as the season goes on, we know what those bestsellers are. What are the conversion drivers? We've passed that early adoption window. And we're in the space where people are more buy now, wear now, as we've seen the last couple of years. So then it becomes more of hooking them with the wow, knowing that those key players will be there once we have them in the door or on the site. And the other piece on a broader level is really shifting the mindset of, yes, we are and will always be a shoe brand first, but really we're a lifestyle brand. We sell clothing, we sell bags, we sell men's and kids. So part of our strategy today is also making sure that we're bringing that awareness to our shopper, because of course, someone who shops more categories is going to have a higher lifetime value. And it's important to do that where customers already are naturally going. So if shoes are really where they're organically shopping, making sure we're representing full outfits on a shoe product page or cross merchandising through ads in the collections. Maybe if you're shopping heels, we can show matchback bags or dresses. Then we kind of have shoppable influencer galleries head to toe. So as much as we can kind of incorporate cross category has been key. And then we also have a lot of competition within ourselves with our wholesale distribution. So that's where it's key to hit shoppers as high up in the funnel as possible and optimizing things like the flyout insert, making sure we have markdown pricing in there to stay competitive. Anything to simplify that shopper's path to purchase. And sometimes that can be as simple as easily serving product to the shopper looking specifically for black boots as it is for the shopper who wants to shop by end use, like Renaissance Tour or Miami Bachelorette.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're doing all this across multiple storefronts, a huge catalogue, multiple territories. I don't know how many total pages that you're merchandising across the whole estate, but there's a lot, right? So how do you apply all that at scale?
It's definitely a balancing act, lots of test and learning. And I think it's just knowing not every solution will fit every collection. So, we've tested AI re-ranking a lot. We know that every time we test it, that wins. It's basically the customer electing what they're most interested in seeing and where they're going to convert. And I think places like an Allstate, where we may have 2,000 products in all women's shoes, for example, that's winning every time we try it. But something that's maybe more curated and trend focused, like a moto trend, where the customer needs some education on like how to wear it, how to build an outfit around it, then that's one that we're going to spend more time kind of hand merchandising. So it's definitely a mixed bag across the site.
Sure. So you mentioned like competing with yourself, and so that's, you know, other retailers retailing your product, and I guess that places some constraints on what you can do, particularly around things like pricing and promotions. Does that factor into your decision making as well?
Yeah, and I think the key is anywhere that we can have exclusive product. And then that pre-order piece really is kind of our early window for those early adopters to be first to market with something that gives us a leg up.
So the next main talking point here, I think it's the next slide, is how do you balance competing priorities? So one of the things that we hear a lot is people want to balance bestsellers and new product. I mean, they're different things, right? A new product can't be a bestseller yet. And then how do you balance things like performance and aesthetics, you know, the look of a page versus what's driving sales?
Yeah, I feel like you and I have talked about that bestseller New Balance a lot.
Yeah.
We're forever trying to perfect it. But, you know, we've seen time and time again that the science does work. I mentioned the AI re-ranking. We've tested it against our manual merchandising multiple times. It always wins out because it really is responding to the customer. It's the quintessential way to drive merchandising with customer intent. But because we have such a wide assortment of products, we ideally would have a second tier within that perimeter to be able to do groupings that even out across desktop and mobile. So something like 6 items, you know, by product type and or color, where it would still have the AI ranking within those groupings, but does give it a little bit more of a aesthetic flow. You know, we have 2 stores on Algolia, and Dolce Vita, for example, you look at their swatch bar on the site, their shoes only come in like 5 colors. They're very kind of neutral color palettes. So they achieve the art side very easily. Whereas a brand like Madden, we have all the colors, all the prints. And that's where kind of what I touched on before, I think comes into play, where it's not always a one size fits all solve for every collection. And you're going to have those broader or more just category focused collections that are easy to just run on the AI. And then you're going to have those more kind of trend focused that you want to have manually curated, or at least a blend where maybe you're pinning a group of products at the top and then, you know, letting the AI ranking come in after that. But knowing which one to focus on when definitely comes from a lot of trial and error and testing.
Sure. Okay. So again, there's a lot going on there. And I guess you've got a lot of people with opinions too. You've got a lot of stakeholders across the business.
Yeah.
So I guess like
data wins because data doesn't lie, right? Kind of takes some of that out at least.
And I guess it must be super important to be really clear in your comms as well. So, you know, being very clear to stakeholders what you're trying to achieve and why you're trying to achieve it, so that if they see things that they don't agree with or understand, that you've got a good rationale and you don't have to spend forever justifying everything you do, right?
Definitely.
All right. So the next big talking point is measurement, right? I mean, how do you know this? How do you know that your hunches are right? How do you know that, you know, the strategy you're taking on a particular page or a particular territory is working, it's achieving what you want it to?
Yeah, this is definitely important when you do have a lot of different, you know, points of view and things coming into play here. Sometimes you can't align and it's just taking 2 versions and testing against each other. But even when you have a hunch and everyone agrees, it's always good to test anytime you're kind of disrupting the shopping flow that the customer is used to. So we're constantly testing and learning, even things you've tested before, because times change, shopping behaviors change. It's good to just continually test those. And when you do find the winning formula in a test, then test iterations of that. Maybe it's how many products do you pin versus the AI that I mentioned before, and kind of finding that sweet spot. I think, there's no one magic metric. It definitely will differ business to business. At the end of the day, the easy answer is always conversion. But there's other pieces to that, right? If click-through rate is down in a test, unless people are getting to the products to convert, then that's not necessarily driving more bottom line. So sometimes that balance is an art in itself. But of course, we're looking at the conversion, we're looking at the click-through rate, making sure nothing's harming us from like a traffic perspective. And then of course, we're always looking at the bottom line. So gross margin's always top of mind. And that's where things that we test and look at data on, like, do I mix sale and regular price? Do I bury sale? Do I let sale roll with my AI re-ranking? Or do I not have sale AI re-rank so that it's in the collection, but it's not, taking over current season? So that all comes into play there too.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's interesting stuff. So you touched on a few kind of key KPIs. I mean, conversion rate is the big one that everyone pays attention to. It's the headline. But do you ever have situations
about, right?
Yeah,
What's the conversion difference?
But do you ever find I'm thinking of a situation that I've seen where we've run an A/B test and it's a slam dunk win in terms of conversion, but in doing so you've kind of knocked AOV down, so the overall is like either a flat or even negative. So do you have different KPIs for different areas of the store, or is it more granular for different customer segments? What else do you measure?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's where kind of the iteration testing comes into play too, of like, it may not be the answer across the whole catalog. Maybe it is only certain customers or certain collections. So if you solve kind of the one piece that works, then what else can you test within that formula to kind of balance out where you did see those dips, and just continue to iterate on that.
Do you have like channel specific metrics as well? I mean, do you track different things depending on like performance of marketing campaigns or different referral channels or anything like that?
Yeah, we definitely, from like a site perspective, we don't differ too much. We're definitely mobile first. So much of our traffic is on mobile, but we think of how our customer likes to be communicated with, whether it's text, whether it's email. We recently rolled out our new app over the summer. So we have push notifications there. So we're definitely balancing those. And there are things that we'll do depending on the channel they're coming from with what we display in terms of like banners and things on the site. So if we're running like early access to our SMS subscribers or something, we want to make sure the banner with that information shows up to them, but no one else. So things like that we kind of do by channel, but merchandising for the most part, we're featuring a lot of the same products at the same time throughout the week. So it's usually pretty consistent, but we can tweak it if we need to by the UTMs.
Sure. All right. So the next big talking point here, and I know this is it's almost like a cliche that everyone's talking about AI right now, but I think it's worth exploring in this context. So what do you think the impact of automation and AI will be on the profession of merchandising? I mean, you've already talked about AI re-ranking, which I know you've been using for a while, but there's a lot more coming, right? This is all gonna change. I mean, is it an opportunity? Is it a threat? Is it a bit of both? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, I think it's opportunity. I personally don't have fear that it's going to replace anyone's work. I do think the people who will succeed and win are those who go in on AI and learn how to work with it, how to use it with their advantage, live alongside it. A lot of people early on just started using like ChatGPT and things for product copies or copy headlines, which was kind of the low-hanging fruit entry point. We mentioned the AI re-ranking, but I'm excited because I feel like the teams work so hard and they work such long days. There's always a million things on the to-do list that we can't get to. So if we can automate and use AI to our advantage on certain things so that we can elevate and be more strategic on others, that feels like a win. For example, we recently started a partnership with Curated for You. And they're a partner that can create curations at scale for us that would be very hard for us to do manually. And they use that, they see where there's high association with our customer base, but they use visual AI to build the curations from our product catalog. So for example, we may be able to do one collection for Taylor Swift Eras Tour, but they can get so granular that they build a collection for every single era for us. Or tons of different vacation destinations, different iterations and occasions of weddings, where then we don't have to manually do that. And they update them on a weekly basis for us. So it's always fresh product. And those are things that then we can be strategic about. How do we let customers know we have these, work with the marketing team to get them in, let them know that this is something we can solve for. We know what they need to wear to all of these things, but we don't have to actually do the manual maintenance of it, which is great.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, I mean, it sounds like you're pretty aligned with the way that we're seeing this, which is that it lets you scale your creativity, right? You play to the strengths of AI, you play to the strengths of your team, and you free up your team to like focus on the stuff where their knowledge of the market and customers has the most impact and the most value.
Definitely.
And I think you were telling before about the example of was it the college football teams that you did?
Yeah,
Campaign.
we did.
I mean, how many collections did that generate? Was it?
I think we did about 12, 15 schools.
Okay.
Which was really fun. And it was all different, the team colors were worked in there, clear handbags, because a lot of college stadiums require kind of see-through bags and things now.
Okay.
So working all of that in, and we really timed it too. We did a tour of a bunch of campuses. Our influencer team had a big kind of Steve Madden shoebox looking truck that went to a couple different campuses and had products and some different activations on there. So we made sure that we had all of those school covered. But then as we were pushing it on social channels and stuff, we were able to say like, hey, we didn't come to your school. We've still got you covered for game day, and have a lot more coverage across schools there to kind of give that personalized experience, which is fun.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of that kind of thing. Curation is definitely an area where AI is going to help.
Definitely. I've gotten triggers based on like the weather from brands.
Yeah.
We haven't sent those, but I've gotten emails from brands that are like, hey, it's raining today. Come shop with us. Here's a lift code.
Here's an umbrella.
And getting like really geo-targeted like that too, which is cool.
That is cool. That is cool. So look, I mean, that's the main bulk of the talking points. I think we've got a couple of audience questions coming through that Rochelle's gonna tell us about.
Great.
You do. Have a few coming in from the audience. What do you do when you've got a product that's just not selling?
Yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes it's patience. Sometimes we're just really early on a trend. We've seen that happen before. So we kind of have to let it ride a bit, give it breathing room. And a couple of months later, we see it pop as that trend kind of opens to wider audiences versus just those early adopters. Sometimes we'll get creative. We'll bundle it with something that is working. So if you buy this and that, maybe you get a little bit of a deal on it. Especially if it's an opportunity to get the shopper into a new category, like buy the shoe and the matchback bag and get a deal on the bag, so that hopefully they fall in love with our bags and keep coming back. Sometimes, especially in some of those niche trends, it does come down to educating the customer, showing it on model. Maybe they can't tell the size of the bag or the right way to lace the shoe or how to wear it in certain seasons and kind of get that versatility so they know that, they're getting the most bang for their buck. So sometimes we focus on those things. And I think sometimes, as hard as it is for us all to admit, like, a dog's a dog, and it's better to move on and focus on what is working and just maximizing that versus trying to force something that just isn't there.
So it's interesting that you didn't mention just kind of, you know, pinning a dog product to the top of all the pages and hoping for the best as a strategy there, right? I mean, we see this a fair bit with sort of the less advanced approaches to merchandise. I mean, what do you think of that? Right? I mean, what does it do to your brand, to your customer experience if you just try too hard to push products that aren't performing?
Yeah, I think, it's always an option to do that, to get it in front of their face. Usually by the time that we're like, okay, this isn't working, we've probably already included it in some sort of marketing. Maybe it was an email send, maybe we had it on the homepage. And if you keep trying to force it, I think that's where you could lose credibility. Like, the shoppers already said that they don't want this, and now we're kind of shoving it down their throats. Nobody wants that. Maybe it's going to drive the bounce rate up on the page if we are pinning it to the top of everywhere. They just keep seeing this product that they don't want. They're not going to keep going. So I think there's risks there. Not to say that we haven't tried that, right? I think everybody has. And I think there's moments that you can see that work or see success with it. But I think you have to determine kind of what's your time frame that you're going to look at before you just call it and say, okay, let's move on. And sometimes you think that that's going to be your winner. There's definitely been products we've shot in campaigns and things that we really believe in, and then the customer didn't really vote for it, but there's something else within that collection that they are voting for. So let's just pivot and roll there where we can. They don't want this sneaker, they want this one. Great. Now we love this sneaker. And that's where, it's just important to have big ears on the ground and listening to your customer, and they'll always tell you.
It sounds like there's a balance to be struck between, selling what the customer wants to buy and kind of telling them what you want them to buy.
Definitely.
So I think we've got a couple more questions.
Looks good too. More broadly across the industry and merchandising craft, are there hesitations to adopting AI?
I don't think so. I think, it's been such a hot topic in the industry for the last couple years now. And I'm finding a lot of excitement, not so much fear. I think everybody's kind of at different levels right now, of the early adopters, the kind of late adopters, and the people dipping their toes in and kind of testing different things out. But I think there's so much potential, and the more that we can automate and customize for the customer, the more connected to us they're going to feel. So I think there's lots of opportunity coming of how we can, incorporate content. That's something that we're figuring out with this curation partnership. We have all of these collections, but we haven't necessarily shot content for all of them because, we're kind of reacting at this speed. So, that's a piece that we have to solve. How can we then kind of automate that? So I think that there's a lot of places to go with it. I think there's tons of opportunity from inventory and fulfillment standpoints, customer facing, that the opportunities are really endless. But I think a lot of people are in the camp of, it's not scary, it's not going to replace, it's just figuring out how to learn and live with it. Which I think is the most exciting part of being in this digital space, right? You could have the same job year over year and it does not ever feel like the same job because so much is always changing in the industry. And AI is where we're at now and what's pivoting. So I think it's exciting.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, you said earlier that you saw it more as an opportunity than a threat, and I'm hoping more and more people kind of go down that route. I agree with you. I think it is a huge opportunity, and finding that balance as you guys are trying to do between balancing the strengths of AI, but not forgetting how humans can add, years of experience or like detailed knowledge of the product and the market. That's where I see the opportunity.
Definitely. I remember this quote, and I forget who gave the presentation, but it was around AI, and they had kind of flagged that, like, once AI starts working properly, like, no one considers it AI anymore. So if you think about it, it's been part of our lives for so long. Like, if you play chess against the computer, that's AI. Like, they're trying to beat you in that chess game and adapt to the plays that you're making and the moves that you're doing. But nobody thinks of that as AI. It's just like, oh, I'm playing a game on the computer and I expect it to work that way, right? So I think that that's kind of the journey of it too, which is really interesting.
Like we have another one that just popped up. Where have you seen Algolia save you the most time? And do you know how much time was saved?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely the AI re-ranking has been a huge time saver. And when we tested it and it's won, I'm not going to say it was like huge difference in performance between the two, but knowing that nothing was lost by having that AI re-ranking and we could free up all the time that the team was manually merchandising was huge. It's probably hours a week, I would say, that the team's not constantly updating and having to maintain every collection on site by just letting that flow. And it's smart where that it's going to consider the most recent days data higher priority. So if it's looking at like a rolling 2 weeks, whatever happened yesterday is going to be taken into priority versus something that happened 10 days ago. So it stays relevant, which is great. And you can still test within that of how many products do you want to re-rank? Things like, do you want the sale to be included in that? So lots of test and learn within it, but I think that's definitely been the biggest time saver for sure.
Sounds like, so you mentioned there that knowing that re-ranking accounts for, recency and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Transparency and explainability are pretty hot topics in AI. And I wonder if that's going to be something that helps people get more comfortable with it, just sort of better visibility over kind of what's going on inside that black box, being able to see why an AI has put product A instead of product B, that sort of thing. Do you think that might kind of ease the transition a little?
I think so. I think the more visibility, the better, especially when it is kind of the unknown. If people do find AI scary, can never over communicate on that. So I think that definitely would be great for sure. And I think it'll be interesting to see where it continues to go with incorporating like personalization and things in that too, right? Like if we know the person's shoe size, we don't want to re-rank products high for them that maybe we're sold out of in their size. So I think that's kind of the next phase that'll be interesting to see as it continues to adopt.
And that kind of almost feeds into I think we've got time for one more question. Yeah, that almost feeds into the last question.
Let's see, I have another one that just popped in. How do you determine realistic KPI? How do you determine realistic KPI goals will be for the next year?
Realistic KPI goals for the next year? I think it's been a lot harder post-COVID. I think, especially on the digital side, so many businesses kind of shot up when people couldn't go into stores. And it's been interesting to figure out where that neutralization is in the years coming after. So, I think it's similar to a lot of what we look at testing. We always want to make sure that improvements we're making to the site are driving conversion. We have to balance from like a brand awareness perspective in some of, paid media campaigns and things. We want to make sure we're top of mind for people so that we don't see that gap in traffic come. So I think those two things are always important. And then, we're always balancing margin. I think, that's the bottom line dollar at the end of the day. And I think price expectations and things have shifted a lot with customers too. So making sure that we're delivering a great product at an achievable price, while maintaining the profitability that we need is always top of mind.
So I think we've got, if you don't mind giving us 1 more minute, I've got one more question that's
Sure.
just come in. So if you could wish for one feature, AI or otherwise, that you would want Algolia or to build for you and your team, merchandising wise, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I have such a long list of things I love. That's a really good question. I think kind of going back to the art and science theme of the overall discussion, I think personalizing the collections on a deeper level, just knowing, only maybe 20% of customers see a homepage. A lot of people are not entering your site and going homepage, collection, product page, which is like the dream scenario. But if we think of, search results and collection pages, having that balance of, yes, we're AI re-ranking, but we can do kind of those groupings to make it still look pretty, and kind of curate the ads. So we have so many of those ads that I mentioned where we're cross-merchandising categories and things to drive awareness. But if it's a customer that we know or that we're learning as they're engaging with the site, I think it would change the type of ads we would want to show up. So I think being able to have kind of that content customization within that space would be really cool.
I'll be sure to make sure that our product team review at least the last couple of minutes of this then. Colleen, thank you. We're at time. We've gone a little bit over. So yeah, thanks once again for giving us this time, and thanks for everyone for putting the time in to come and hear us. Rochelle, have you got anything to close off with? Any housekeeping?
No, I think this was a great discussion. Thanks so much, Colleen, for taking the time to answer all of our questions, and for the great discussion. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. It was fun. Always good to see you guys.
Oh, likewise. So this concludes the webinar. Thanks for attending, everyone. We hope you learned a lot and enjoyed the presentation. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.